All right, what's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well on this Tuesday. Oh man, when was the last time I went live on a Tuesday? Probably last week sometime. But as the title says, we're gonna stick around. We're gonna be here for about an hour and taking your calls. I'm gonna put the number here in the chat. Anybody who decides they want to chop it up, and we'll try that number. Usually I put that number out for voicemails, but we can use it for calls today. That's fine. All right. So while we wait for people to come on and whatnot, um, just want to talk briefly while we wait. Um, perfect timing. Perfect time. Let me give a little man TV straight. Just when I was getting started, he was doing fine until now. Hold on, I'm gonna cut it back on so he won't be fussing in the midst of the stream. What's going on, Miss Theology Mom? How you doing? I'll be right back. I'm just gonna cut the TV on for my little man. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. All right. How you been doing? So just last week I did a well this week I did a podcast episode dealing with critical race theory, defining it, going to a few websites and discussing what they say about it. And I shared the podcast on Facebook, and one of the guys asked me what books have I read on it. It's just a thing. And this has been going on for months, probably years now. Every time someone is coming against this thought or this idea, the first thing they want to bring up is what have you read on it? Like, I mean, I've read books on Marxism, but my thing is, and I didn't entertain the question because my thing is, regardless if I've read this book, that book, and a bunch of other books that you or somebody else may think I should read before talking about a subject, we have a plethora of information out there that I can read to gather to get the idea that's behind this idea. And so if there's somehow out of all the books you're reading that's giving me information that I can't get from looking it up and researching it, and that the schools of thought are dealing with, then there's really no reason of even asking a question. What books have you read on it? The issue is it true? It's a theory. It's not real, it's a theory. It's not proven, it's a theory. Even if in itself, the name in itself lets us know that it's not proven. It's an assumption that's made. But now, because it's now crept in the church as well, it's going beyond that. And matter of fact, I listened to AD today on his YouTube channel, and he brought up something that was, he was mentioning something else he was listening to that basically show how critical race theory in of itself has a whole other worldview, behind it, which I tend to agree with that. And it's evident in what it teaches and in the understanding that it's trying to put off its knowledge. And so it's like, I don't have to read 4 or 5 of these authors of these books to understand that this concept is false. Just like I don't have to read any of Darwin's books or anything that he may have written to understand that evolution is false. You don't have to do that. I mean, Are the scriptures sufficient to let us know if these things are true or not? Are the scriptures sufficient? Are they enough? And I guess there's some that will argue and say no, it's not. All we can take is what the scriptures teach concerning racism. What the scriptures teach concerning, as what the scriptures call it, partiality. What the scriptures teach concerning powers and authorities and how they're put in place and who is in office and who does this and who has that. What do scriptures teach about all that? Does the scriptures consider these things evil and wicked because there's some people who have and some people who don't? Is it a sin issue? Then when it comes to in our common day and what we have going on, the real question is there systemic racism in effect today? And even if you listen to my podcast, I try my best to deal honestly with the information that we have. Like, we can point at systemic racism in the past, we can point at it. No one can disagree with it. It's not a theory that these things were in place. It is true and it's evident that these things were in place, that blacks couldn't vote, and that they were the only ones and the only ones who were to be slaves. It was at one point that they were not allowed to read, and any white person who was caught trying to teach a black man how to read was flogged. They were beaten, disciplined, some sent to jail. So these things are evident. We can point to them. How the court cases were how like judgments in courts were pitted against black people and stuff like that. We can look to that. We can point to that. But is that the same today? And we have to be honest with the information. Like, don't tell me your idea of critical race theory being in effect today and is being true is because you as a black man are scared to wear your clothes, your do rag, or whatever the case may be, out in the street because you maybe around a variety of white people. So you think that automatically that's just gonna make you look like a thug and be classified as something you're not. You know what I'm saying? And even if it is, even if they do think that you're something you're not, even if they think you're a thug just because you have a durag, or they think I guess I'm a thug because I have dreadlocks. It doesn't matter. That's not gonna make me become what they think. If someone sees my locks, I'm walking out in the streets, I'm walking out, and I go to the mall or the case may be, and someone looks at me and says, that must be a thug because I have locks in my hair. Something's wrong with them. I don't have to change my locks. I don't have to wear the clean cut. Now, if you work at a job, if you're going to work for a job and they tell you that the dress code to work here is such where they won't take this, well, then you got to make a decision. You got to make a decision. That's that's what they want to do. That's their decision. That's their right to do that. You own a business. You have a right to say who can work and who can't work there. You know what I'm saying? So like we have to be able to do that. Miss Something, how you doing? Got an advice question coming. Okay, bring it on. Bring it on. Also, guys, I got the number up. I don't know if you can still see it in the chat, but I got the number. If anybody wants to call in, you're welcome to call in the number as well. We can chop it up. We can do that live. Let me fix this on the filter real quick. But yeah, I don't have to change. I don't have to change who I am because of someone's misperception of me. And that's a lot of people point to systemic racism as like because of jobs they may or may not hire blacks to do certain things, whatever the case may be. But we don't have an instance today. We like I said, once again, we can point to in the past, but we don't have an instance today whereas you have a black man applying for a job and the only reason he doesn't get that job is because he was black. Now, you have to assume the motive and the heart of the individual who's trying to employ them or not employ them. You have to assume the motive to say that if they tell him, well, it seems that your resume isn't fitting, or well, you're very qualified, but we have someone who's more qualified. You have to be able to you assume that they don't mean that. They didn't find nobody more qualified than me. It had to be that it's racism. Like you have to do that. You have to assume the heart, and that's on you. Because the Bible tells us we can't know the heart of man. We can't. We can tell by the actions, but what is wicked in the heart of a person who just says, "Hey, I'm sorry, we just couldn't. It just didn't go your way this time. We got somebody else to fill that position." And just because it happens to be a white man, you automatically assume it's racism. This is why I take my stance as I do. I want to. I want evidence. Put that down. That's not a toy. We gotta look at evidence. What is evidence of these things going on? And I want to look at things on an individual level. Like I said, there was a brother who got mad at me because I was hard on that stance. We gotta look at things at the individual levels. You can look at things and make a blanket statement, but it won't be true. That you deal with everything individually. Hey Monique, how you doing? How far does that go? Owners can say who can and can't work there. So does that mean they can say, my business, I don't hire blacks? It's his thing. Yes. Yes, they can. It's his issue. What people want to happen is that they want the government to come in and have control over what people do in their businesses and whatnot. This is the thing. This is a preference. This is preference. Just like when somebody says, I want somebody to work here who has this level of degree or this level of learning or is this age, whatever the case may be, or whether they prefer a woman over a man for a clerical position, whatever the case may be. This is preference. If I own a business, like I have a business, it's not all big and everything, but I have a business. I have a photography business. I should have a right to be able to say who I want to work for me and who I don't. That should be my right. You know what I'm saying? And so for the government to come and take that away from me, that's wrong. Now, is it a sin issue? Once again, we're talking about government versus dealing with God. Is it a sin issue for somebody to be partial to someone who's white over black because of racism? Yes, that's sin. But they have to deal with God with that. They have to deal with God with that. But the government should not have a right to tell me what to do with my business. Same thing we deal with in churches. You know, should the government have a right to come into your church and tell you, well, you gotta preach to you gotta marry homosexuals. That's what you have to do. The government's coming in and taking that control. He said also, I love my natural hair. If an employer wants my hair straight, I take issue with that. What does my hair have to do with how well I do my job? I agree with you. I agree with you. Just like I mentioned about my locks. Like in my job that I work now, there probably be some positions they won't hire me because I have locks. They'd probably rather me have a short haircut and what case may be in certain positions. They may do that, and I find issue with that too. That's preference. Once again, the government can't fix that. That's on the individual's heart. The government can't fix any of that. They can never change that. Once again, think about what the government did do to try to fix that. Affirmative action. So people aren't hiring blacks, right? They prefer whites over blacks. What happens? Affirmative action. So then what happens because of affirmative action? People who are less qualified are getting hired for jobs and not able to do their job well. They get fired and then they have that on their resume, right? Because they can't do it. They're not qualified, but they pick them, they choose them because they need to meet a quota. Same thing in the schools. This student is not qualified to go to this school. They don't meet the requirements to get here, but because of affirmative action, they have to take them. And then the student goes to a college that they're not qualified for and end up failing out. That's what happens. You know what I'm saying? And it happens a lot. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't help. It doesn't help when the government is getting involved. You know what I'm saying? It says, can you speak to how this works within the realm of equality and sin? Right. Okay, so I don't know if you said you hear me on the from that question there, but yeah, like when it's sinful, it's sin, and that's where we have to go to the Lord. Like, hey, that's where we present the gospel, but this is where the gospel comes in at, and this is where people who are holding to critical race theory and everything else, they're leaving out. They're saying, oh, we're supposed to include all this. We're including this in the gospel, but no, the gospel says something totally different than what you're saying. That should be the solution. Because the solution that critical race theory wants to bring out is not going to change the heart of man. It just brings the government in and try to fix something that it can't fix. And it's going to end up messing it up like it's done before. That's all it's going to do. And it's not going to help anything. But if we take what God says in his word, if a person doesn't want to hire me because I have locks, well, I have a right and I have a choice to go work somewhere else. I don't have to work for you. I don't. If my job right now said, Jamal, you in order to continue to work here, in our new dress code policy, you can't have dreadlocks. You have to cut your dreadlocks. I have a choice to make. What's more important? Feeding my family, keeping my hair. I got a choice to make. I have a choice. Will I like it? Oh. Will I find issue with it? Yes. If it's proof of racism, is it sin? Yes. That's just the reality of the situation. And I know where people on the critical race theory side, they would say, well, you don't take that same stance when it comes to abortion. The difference is when it comes to abortion, you have laws in place that protects people that murders their children. That's what's going on. You have laws, you have policies and everything in place that protects a woman for murdering a child, or for parents, men and women deciding together and conspiring together to murder their child. That's what's happening, and the laws are protecting them. That's a difference. That's just like the laws protecting whites beating blacks. We will be against that too, right? We'll be against that. Attacking another black man, we'll be against that. Because one, it's already a sin issue, but then you have laws protecting that. And we want to get rid of that. And like, you can make a law, and anybody who's sensible enough to know, you can make a law that's against abortion that says if anyone gets an abortion, they're gonna spend jail, they're gonna have jail time and everything else. So you can have that. What it's gonna do? It's gonna do the same thing that it does when you tell a person, hey, you can't commit murder, or this is what's gonna happen. They're still gonna commit murder. They're just gonna try to do it and get away with it. Try to do it without being caught, right? But that doesn't hide them from God. It doesn't hide them from God. God still sees and knows all things. He sees the heart of the individual who's racist and tries to play it off and says, oh, well, this is just, this is just, a business move. It's trying to go in another direction and stuff like that. Yeah, they can say that, but God knows the heart. We don't know the heart of man. We'll just be making an assumption. And unless we have evidence, if we call it racism where we cannot prove it, then it's bearing false witness. And therefore, we in turn will be in sin. And that's why we must be careful. See, wherever there is racism, I'm standing alongside the people on critical race theory. Okay, where's racism? Let's deal with it. Let's deal with it, right? But I'm not going to deal with it the wrong way. I'm deal with it according to how God says we should. And that's the thing. That's the main thing. I appreciate that, Monique. Like these are real issues. These are real things. These are real thoughts. Even as I'm saying these things, y'all check me out. Like even as I'm saying these things, I know that me personally, I will find an issue with someone saying I gotta cut my locks. After all the work and time I spent in growing these things and making sure they're right, and now you tell me I gotta cut them? Yeah, I'm gonna feel some kind of way. I'm be putting some application somewhere or something. But if nothing comes up, if no one else decides to hire my behind, I got to make a decision. And I know I know that providing for my family and taking care of what I need to take care of as a man, as a Christian, the lot's gonna just have to go. That's just what it boils down to. Good thing about locks, I can save them and attach them later. That's a good thing about that. But yeah, reattach them. Yeah, like we're all made in the imago Dei, so it shouldn't be that I should be looking at anyone else different because of how they look. I should be treating anyone else different because of how they look, how God made them. God created them this way, created them with the beautiful white skin, or beautiful black skin, beautiful brown, beautiful yellow, pink, whatever. God created them that way, and it's beautiful and it's good because God did it. The level of melanin in my skin versus Krista and anyone else, like, that's beautiful. God did that in His design. We are evidence. We are evidence in ourselves that there is a creator. How does evolution account for the different pigmentations in our skin and we all come from the same bacteria? And I'm gonna have to give some thought to this. I'm struggling with this one. I understand. I understand. I do. I do. I do. I understand it. But man, like, how can they account for that? How we're all different shades, yet we're the same color, yet just different shades. Y'all stop. Man. Yeah, it's tough, Monique. I hear you. I'm with you, sis. I am. But that's the answer biblically. And when we deal with things according to how God views justice, the just and unjust, and how He deals with them, how He handles them. You think about the parable. I know this is a little different, so just bear with me. But the parable dealing with the workers and the wage, how you had the ones who's working all this time, and they were agreed for a denarii, but then you had the one coming in at the last hour, and they get paid the same as everyone else. The owner of the vineyard, the one who owns it, who has the business, who hired them, had the right to give that worker the same amount as everyone else. Had the right to do so, and they felt they was wrong. They felt it was wrong that they've been here all this time. This person coming in the last hour and get the same that we make, But it was the owner of the vineyard's right. It was his right. If a person builds a business and has a business, guess what? They have a right. But look at this. Check this out. Just like in anything, if a person refuses to employ others because of racism, or refuses to serve people because of racism, their business falls. It's going to end up falling. It's not going to last, especially talking about serving people. The places that we're willing to hire others and willing to serve others who don't look like them, they're the ones that flourish more. They are. More people come to their businesses. I mean, just be real. Let's be honest. As a photographer, as a Christian photographer, I won't shoot a gay wedding. I won't. Right? But there's another photographer who don't have my convictions and who's willing to shoot that and some. He's going to make more money. He's probably going to get more business than I do. He just may. That's business. It's business. And so, I mean, the thing is, well, if I want to make that kind of money, if I want to do that, well, I need to bend, right? I know. I mean, that's my principle. But I'm just saying, like, that's how businesses deal. That's how they suffer. Loan companies. So they don't want to loan to black people. Okay, that's how they make their money. That's how loan companies make their money. So guess what? The loan company over here, they're willing to loan the blacks, and they're gonna get the most business. That's just what happens. So, what levels of government protection do you advocate for when it comes to employee protection? That which would goes that would line up with God's standard of how we deal with things. So, for instance, harassment, right? Well, what happens in an employer workplace when someone is harassed? They should be dealt with. It is a sin issue, right? Especially talking about sexual harassment and everything else. That's also a sin issue as well. That should be dealt with. Somebody mistreating someone else, that should be dealt with. You know what I'm saying? And so, yeah, we can see all those things in place. And even the government deals with businesses in that sense as well, because harassment now is the law. Like it means going. I mean, when you harass someone, even sexual harass, it can be against the law. You can actually face some time behind it, or fine, or whatever they do. So it's like we talk about employee protection. We need to get specific. What things are we protecting against? Can we talk about employee in the workplace? So you have a person who's hired. He's hired by an employer, and all of a sudden there's some mistreatment. There's some partiality going on. I think there should be something done with that. But we call it what it is. It's partiality, being partial, not being fair. There should be some level of dealing with that. It's a sin issue. So I will hold to God's justice in that. But when we're talking about as far as businesses and hiring people and this and that and the third, remember, we're talking about the government being able to come in and tell someone what they must do or what they got to do with their business. And that's what we're talking about first is how someone is treated and how someone is done. I hope I made a little bit of sense. I don't know. And we have stuff like that in the government in place for people who are mistreated at work, lawsuits taken out, and everything else. I mean, there's things that are done in those areas, and we have those things in place. But we just have to be specific on what we're dealing with. Like, for instance, just we're talking about sin issue, right? So no, I'm not. I'm not gonna be looking for just for the sake of us talking what we was talking about. I wouldn't be looking for employee protection on the fact that if they say or they come up with a policy that I have to cut my hair. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna look for. I'm not gonna expect any level of government protection in that sense. But if something is affecting me as far as my person, like my health, my well being, and all that, I think those are things that we should be mindful of, and there should be protection in that. We're made in the image of God. And see, and just like anything I mentioned about murder or anything else, you can have policies put in place to try to protect people from harassment and all that stuff, but they still happen because we live in a fallen world. That doesn't shouldn't excuse it. That shouldn't make it that we don't push for those things and push hard for those things. But we as Christians should still come to this looking at it through a biblical lens and knowing what's really going on. When the world is panicking and don't really know what to do about these situations and these issues, we should be able to look at it from a gospel centered lens, a biblical lens, and see what has God already said about these things and what's going to be done about these things. What if I'm harassed because of your skin color? Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's not. I'm not saying anything again. So, yeah. Once again, if there's racism involved, right? If there's racism involved, then yeah, something should be done with it. My issue with everything dealing with the critical race theory and everything else is blanketed. It's blanketed. It's not. It's not specific. Like you named a specific instance, and that means it has to be shown that that's the reason why. Keep in mind what the Bible tells us concerning justice. Every charge is brought against him in the mouth of two or three witnesses, right? So is it true that you're actually being harassed because of your skin color? Is a person coming in there yelling out racist rhetoric at you and keep harassing you? Is that evident? Is it true? If it's true, then yes, by all means, somebody should intervene, right? Whether it be from the local level, it needs to be dealt with, right? Yeah, so it needs to be handled. Okay, safety, health, well-being. There should be intervention. Yes, because yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Because that goes against look, that goes against us being made in Imago Dei. God's very principle why we should treat each other the way we should. Before God gave Moses the laws, what did He say? Man should not murder another man. Why? Because he's made in the image of God. So we should love one another, treat one another with respect, dignity, and respect because of the fact that we're made in the image of God. That's it. That's it. So I shouldn't be trying to harm you. I shouldn't be trying to uh, be any kind of stumbling block to lessen your health or any of that kind of stuff or your well being that we can point to just because of anything. Because you are made in the image of God. That's how it should be. And it's just like anything else. If we're talking about, I know we kind of going in and out from the workforce and just being a civilian. But out in the workforce, you have your levels. So you have within the job what they're supposed to do. If it doesn't get handled there, where it can go from there, and so on and so forth. There's levels of what it's going to deal with. But the penalty is going to fit what's going on. And so, like for instance, I'm not going to expect anybody to spend jail time really because of harassment. Not really expecting that. If it happens, that means they're really cracking down on it. But I really not expecting it. Sexual harassment, maybe. But just harassment, I don't expect anybody facing jail time. But I do expect maybe some fines to be had or what the case may be. I mean, dealing with just our government. But keep in mind, in the midst of all of this, the ultimate judge, the ultimate one who's going to repay those who do wrong is God. It's God. Because, see, our world, our culture will never be able to handle justice perfectly. It won't. And this is another issue I have with the whole woke side, the whole social justice. They're pushing for something that God Himself has never promised us that we'll have in this lifetime, in this earth. Never promised us that it'll be like the way we feel like it needs to be politically and socially and everything else. He didn't promise us any of that. Not here. And I heard Ekimene a Yuan say on a recent courageous conversations on Jude 3, say how people look for the heavenlies and stuff like that, but she wants hers now. It's not enough to be looking for it in the future. We need to be seeing it now. We need to be seeing some of that now. Who told you that you need to see that now? Who told you that you got a right to that you going to? God is sovereign. We don't deserve anything. I'm venting, y'all. I'm just venting here. Like, we don't deserve anything. If I walk out there and someone harasses me because of my skin color, I deserve worse. Ooh, that do not sound good. Somebody don't like that. Somebody have a problem with that. And I understand. But look, that's the reality, y'all. I deserve worse. That doesn't mean that once again, that doesn't mean that shouldn't be dealt with, right? I'm not saying that. But what they're looking for, the goal that they want to have, is not going to be accomplished here. It won't be accomplished here. They can protest as much as they want because they're, this is. Think about the civil rights movement. What was the issue there? What was the civil rights movement there? Blacks could not vote. There was no equality when it comes to blacks and whites being able to vote. Right? That was it. Our person, right, of every black person in the city counted on the census, right? So therefore that state can have representation, but the black man's vote did not count. It didn't. So what was that was about? So they can have that civil right, and also being able to drink at the same water fountains and not have to go around back just to get food and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Because it was these were sentences. It was hate. This was hate crimes. This is what it was. Jim Crow laws, everything else. All this was hate. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, like you had those things in place, but that's what they did. But how now? What laws are in place that are specifically against blacks? That's all I've been asking. I've been asking people. Everybody who stands on that side, I've been asking. Don't ask me what books I've read. Tell me what laws are in place, what policies are in place that are specifically targeted at black people to keep us from being able to succeed in this life. That's what I want to know. You point to the prison system, say, well, look how many people are in the prison system. Who committed the crime? No, 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 no. You're good. And I'm not over the time yet, Sunbeam. I'm on to 8:30. I started at 7:30, so we're good. No, you can ask if you still want to. Is it if you want to still ask, you can. It's still time. I said I was gonna be on for an hour. I started at 7:30, so I'm gonna be on to at least 8:30. And once again, if anybody wants to call, you can. You're welcome to call in. I probably can't see the number anymore, but that number is 801-980-6333. If you want to call, you can. Welcome to do that. But yeah, they point to the prison system, and I'm like, well, who committed the crimes? Now, during the time they was doing the war against drugs and all of that, yes, the sentences against drug possession is like skyrocket. It's high. You know what I'm saying? Like no argument there. I'll actually be okay if somebody was to try to push for reduction in sentences in that sense. I actually be okay with that. But the thing is, if a person understands that if I go and sell this cocaine or sell this marijuana in a state that is not legal, knowing that it's not legal, and I do these things, knowing what the consequences are, I have no one else to blame but myself. I don't have the white man to blame that I'm in prison. I did the crime. Then people will say, well, they lived in impoverished neighborhoods and they had no other choice but to do that. No, there's always a choice. There's always a choice. There's always a hustle that's legal. It is. It may take some creativity, it may take some time, some effort on your part, but there's always a hustle that is legal. May not give you the fastest results and everything else, but it's always a better option. And that's the thing. People want things fast. They want the success fast. They want the money fast. They want the car fast. They want this and that fast. And that may be, and I'll give somebody the benefit of the doubt. That may be somebody who just all they did was sell drugs just because they want to put food on the table for their family. That person may just exist. That's all that they did. No, I highly doubt it. 9 out of 10 people who are caught selling and distributing drugs is not they probably are putting food in the family. That's one of the things they're doing, but they're splurging. They're spending money on things that they want. You know what I'm saying? They ain't investing. They ain't doing this and doing that third. You even look at people point at Nipsey, how he went in, he took some of the money he made off the streets and stuff like that and put it back into communities and stuff. But it ain't all he did. That ain't all he did with this money. He bought more drugs with it. You know what I'm saying? Probably a long time ago, probably had enough to come out of it and not even take that money anymore and work an honest job. Chose not to. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm not sold on that. That it's just because oh man it's all they had. No, that ain't true. How many, as I mentioned on the podcast, how many success stories do we have with people who are lived in worse neighborhoods than what I've grown up in or anyone else, yet come out success? What's up, boy? We were watching from driving home from work. Home now. I have to get ready for our live stream. Well, love you, brother. Love y'all too. Thanks for the conversation with Monique. Oh, most definitely, most definitely. Thank you, Monique, for the questions and the pushback and everything. Thank you, Theology Mom. Thank you for coming in and just watching and tuning in. Thank y'all. Love y'all too. Glad y'all made it back safe. I know y'all were watching the driving, so I'm glad y'all made it to your destination safe. Pray your live stream goes well as well. Sunbeam Forever, if you're still there, you're welcome to still ask your questions. It's not too late. If it's on another subject, another topic, that's fine as well. I still be on for another 20 minutes or so. And I'm so thankful. Like, this is, in fact, I think it's the first time that I've gone live just to go live. Like, no podcast in mind and not really talking about any subject, just coming on just to chop it up with people outside of my Saturday live streams. So I really am thankful for that. Thankful for you guys coming on and chopping it up with me. All right, so nobody there right now? Hold on a second. All right, so until somebody come on, play a couple ads since I'm here. Play a couple ads, a couple commercials.
What's up, everyone? This is James Watkins, host of the Five Solas podcast and founder of Five Solas Ministries. Be sure to check out our podcast that releases every Thursday on your favorite podcasting app as we discuss Christian doctrine and dive into the Reformed theological distinctives and their continued relevance for the church and world today. Grace alone, faith alone, Christ alone, Scripture alone, to the glory of God alone. Join us each episode as we discuss the truths of these foundational rallying cries of the Protestant reformers and how this material helps challenge and direct the current church in its life of worship and witness. Visit us online at www.5solasministries.com. That's www.5solasministries.com to learn more information about the ministry and to also check out our awesome Five Solas lineup of t-shirts and gospel tracts. And as always, may all that you do be done to the glory of God. Soli Deo Gloria.
Can you prove that God is a Trinity? Can you prove that Jesus is God? Can you defend the Christian faith? And what is it that Christians truly believe? The new book by Andrew Rappaport, What Do We Believe?, will answer those questions and more. Some people just don't understand what the church is today, but this book will go through the history and meaning of the church and what's more important than to understand man's sinfulness and God's salvation. Get your copy at whatdowebelievebook.com or at the strivingforeternity.org store.
One more I'm gonna play for you.
The Everyday Ministry Podcast.
This is James White.
Jamie Owen.
I'm Chris Northworthy.
This is Daniel Brown.
Check out our full-length episodes released every first and third Monday of every month. And our short Minister's Minute episodes released every second and fourth Monday of the month.
What is youth ministry?
What is apologetics?
If Christ found this important, then it should be important to us.
The Everyday Ministry Podcast.
Where everyday ministers get together to discuss
Everyday Ministry.
All right. Well, I guess I might as well, man. I still got a little time. Played a little prescribed truth ad for you. Here we go.
Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. Therefore, laying aside falsehood, speak truth, each one of you with his neighbor, for we are members of one another for his name's sake.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jamal Bandy, the host of the Prescribed Truth Podcast, where I seek to distribute the truth that the doctor prescribes to the church and the world today. The Lord graciously brought me out of a cult in 2010, saved me in 2013, and in 2017, Prescribed Truth began. My mission has been to spread the truth of God's word while refuting dangerous lies affecting most churches and the culture at large from a biblical and reformed perspective. Join me on Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for the live recording of the podcast on YouTube, and download the audio version wherever podcasts can be found, including the Christian podcast community. If you would like to know more about Prescribed Truth, please visit my website at prescribedtruth.com. And remember, this world is full of errors, but the only thing that the doctor prescribes is truth. Blessings. All right. Okay, Sunbeam, I was just seeing. I don't know what part of the stream you're at. I don't know if you're watching from before or you're watching live at this point, but I see your comment now. It says, "Okay, a family member who is gay is getting married and expected me to be there. I love her to pieces, but I can't see that. It's wrong. I think she forgot. I can't see that it's wrong. I think she forgot how I felt about it when she came out. Yeah. See that it's wrong. All right. So, and I think what you're asking me, or is as far as, is it wrong to attend because you love her and you're this family member? I understand the question. I think that's if I do understand the question, I get that. This is the thing. If we're Christian, we're Christian convictions. We're called to be honest. We're called to, just like I just played the ad, Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. It says, laying aside all falsehood, speak truth each one to his neighbor. For we are members of one another. And so it's like we must speak truth. And so if you're standing in a wedding, what you're saying is, I'm sorry. And of course, I have some family members who will be mad at me. Oh yeah. That's gonna be. And see, this thing, we have to be honest. We have to tell the truth, right? If we stand in a wedding ceremony, what you're doing, you're there in support of those who is getting married. This is why, and I don't know if they still do it in a lot of ceremonies. I know in the ones that I've attended, even when I shot pictures for them, they still do ask the question, if anyone has a problem with these two being wed, let him speak now or forever hold their peace. And everyone should be remaining silent, because don't let somebody raise their hand and says, no, I don't agree with these people getting married. You're talking about some embarrassment, right? That's some humiliation for you. But that's what we're doing when we stand in a wedding ceremony, even just being an attendant. We're there in support of those who are being married. We're saying that we agree with what they're doing, and we give our support, our love and support. And so, in that sense, no, we shouldn't be attending. As Christians, we should not attend. Now, I had this conversation with a friend of mine in the past who was faced with the same issue, and it wasn't a family member. But it was, a friend, a close friend. And she came to me with the same question. I gave the same answer. She felt like it would be unloving for her not to attend the wedding. It would be unloving. She wants this relationship with this friend to continue to grow. She doesn't want to be stopped. She doesn't want this person to be offended and everything else. And so she said, hey, I gotta go because I love them. But this is what Jesus says to us. that if anyone desires to be a disciple of me, a follower of me, he must first deny himself, lay down his cross, and follow me. That's what Jesus says. And he says that we should be willing to hate our mother, father, sister, brother, children, spouse, and children for his name's sake. For his name's sake. Right? And so what is Jesus saying? The word hate they're dealing with in Jewish language is dealing with love less. And so we should be willing to love people less than we do Jesus. Right? And so if Jesus says that this is a sin against him, it's not that homosexuality, the act of it, it's just that it's a bad choice. It is an offense against God, just as much as my committing adultery will be an offense against God, just as much as me lying is an offense against God. It's not that it's just a bad lie, or I told a big lie or a little lie. My lie, regardless of how small or big it is an offense against God. And no Christian should be approving of me lying, right? For this, even for the sake of love, because love, as Bible says, love does not rejoice in ungodliness, but rejoices with the truth. That's what it says. And so if we love an individual, we're actually showing our love for them by not rejoicing with them and what they're doing that's ungodly. You see? And so our culture has a false idea of what love is, and we can't allow the culture to define for us what how God has already defined what love is. And so we can't let them have that, and not in a prideful sense. I'm not saying in a prideful sense. What I'm saying is we have to go to the Lord for strength and for courage and boldness in these areas, and still yet be able to be compassionate and loving towards them, but understanding that I can't give approval to this. I can't be there in attendance to this because it's an offense against God. And I want you to turn from your sin and put your trust in God, and because He's the one who created you. He's the one who's you're going to have to stand before, just like I will. And I don't want to give approval for something that God says He hates, and that's the thing. And if God hates sin, we should hate it too. That's the point of being a Christian, that we're believers. Not that we're sinless as far as being perfect now, but our heart towards sin is a lot different than it was before we were saved. And so if that's the case, well, we hate sin too. That means just as much as it bothers God, the fact that there is a man marrying another man or a woman marrying another woman, yeah, this as much as it offends God, it offends me too. I can't be around that. I can't condone that. You know. So yeah, so no, and family will be mad and will be upset, but this is why once again Jesus said we must be willing to take up our cross and follow Him. Any man who puts his hand to the plow and looks back is not fit to be His disciple. And we have to keep these things in mind when we're facing against a godless culture. And keep in mind, the apostles and the disciples had it much worse than what we're dealing with today. The only thing that we're dealing with is that somebody may not like us, somebody may not want to talk to us again, and this and that. And I still struggle with that. I struggle with the fact that people not want to talk to me for where I stand concerning biblical truths. We deal with that, right? That's an American issue. Really, that's an American issue. You know what I'm saying? Because like back in the apostles' day, they weren't worried about nobody liking them. They were fearing for their life. Them holding on to their Christian values could cost them their very life, whereas it just cost us some relationships, and so we have to keep those things in mind. And I'm not saying that we're going to do these things perfectly. Sunbeam, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying we're going to do these things perfectly. What I'm saying is this should be the focus. This should be the aim, and it should be gospel centered. You know what I'm saying? If you're not going to that wedding, don't just leave it at, oh, I'm not going to attend. Just share with her the truth of the gospel. Share with her. Share with them, family who's maybe opposing. Share with them. The best way you can, share with them the good news of Christ. And this is the reason why. And by God's grace, maybe their hearts will change and maybe their heart will turn. The beautiful thing about it is, even if that individual gets married to the same sex, that marriage may look okay on paper, but it doesn't stand before God. So if that person breaks up with that individual and divorces them in the future, legally in the system, it doesn't mean they're divorced in God's eyes. They were never married. You know what I'm saying? And so that's not too late for them in that sense, as far as finding a spouse and all those things, if that's what God wants from them. But that should be the main thing. Our main thing should be their eternity. what's going to happen to them when they stand before the Lord? He said, no, I know it's wrong. How do I tell her without her really getting hurt? And that's the thing, and that is hard. It's gonna be tough because see, what I've learned, as especially experience of sharing with people, is you can say something in the most sincere, compassionate, nicest ways you can, soft tone and everything. You can have the look, the look like this. I'm like, look, I'm just trying to tell. Like you could look all like that. You could do everything, and yet they still may get hostile. They still may be hurt. You know what I'm saying? That's it. You can't help that part. You can't. Only thing is we're called to do as Christians is to stand on what is true. Stand on what God has said is his word and trust him with the outcome. They may walk away hurt, but you don't know. How do we know if the Lord is dealing with their heart? We don't know. A good story of a friend of mine, good friend Alliance on here, was shared with me how he shared with a friend of his from the neighborhood, and he was talking about how that homie got like real upset with him. Like he got so mad at him, cussed him out and everything. Just got real mad, and walked away and left his house and everything else. And like they wouldn't talk, but that same guy ended up calling him back, weeping, crying, wanting to return to the Lord. And like, I'm not saying that happens all the time, but that's an instance where it's like, hey, praise God for the brother being bold and standing for truth, even in the midst of hostility. And God worked on the heart of the individual who was hostile. There's nothing we can do about that. There's nothing we can do about that. We can just share the truth the best way we can and love them in the midst of it. Don't mistreat them. Love them, right? We don't agree with the sin. We don't condone the sin. We're not giving approval and none of that kind of stuff. Not supporting in those areas. But I still love you. And I still love you in the midst of me not supporting. They may not see it as love. They may see it as hate. But in that sense, if you're ridiculed for that, Jesus says that you're blessed. If they ridicule you for his sake, then you're blessed. That's what God says. That's what God says. And so it's like, that's the thing. We should if we're being ridiculed for anything, if people are calling us names for anything, there's any charge that can be against us for anything, let it be because we were standing for the truth of God's word. That let it be for Christ's sake, and not our own pride or our own being irritable and everything else. Like because there's a wrong way to handle that, right? What I'm saying? There's a wrong way to deal with that, most definitely. And see, that's a good, that's a good question. So I mean, hey, buddy, hey, man. It's a destination wedding for a week. I absolutely do not want to see her marry a woman. Yeah, I know. Just know this well. Change things. She, my first cousin, favorite, and a year older than my daughter. Perhaps I can go to the resort and not the wedding. Yeah. So this is the thing, and I'm being careful with this because I don't want to seem legalistic in this, but I want to be clear. Anything that's in celebration of what took place there, we have to be careful of, and I would say, best don't do it. It's best don't do it, and that will be my advice, because you don't want your good to be evil spoken of. And the sense is, once again, everything around this, like you said, it's a destination wedding. The whole reason why we're going on this trip is for this wedding. There's gonna be a reception afterwards and everything else, party, whatever the case may be. Maybe if you're talking about going to a resort just to enjoy the beach or going to enjoy the other scenery while they're doing what they're doing. I feel you. Just be careful with that. What I'm saying? But what I would say is anything that's in celebration of what took place is giving celebration into what happened. That's what I'm leaving it there. With that. What I'm saying? So, yeah. Because the resort may be, them going to the resort may be in celebration of the wedding. Those who's going, the paying for it and everything else, That may be what it's for. But see, you already know in your heart, you already know biblically this is wrong. This is a sin issue. And I mean, my only thing is, for the sake of spending time with family, and this is me, this is me. For the sake of spending time with family and everything else, I wouldn't see a problem with going to the resort. Me personally, just going to the resort, but that time needs to be redeemable. Like you just had family members who just committed sin, and then those who were in attendance who gave approval to sin, which in themselves are now sinning. And yet, what we're gonna do is we're gonna enjoy the beach. We're gonna enjoy this, and I would be careful with that. I would just find it best that I wouldn't go. I just wouldn't go, and because at the end of the day, we want to honor God. We want to do things to the glory of God. So that would be my advice on that. So even in my personal opinion, and saying that, hey, you know what, going to a resort in itself is not going to be an issue, but it's because of what's surrounding the reason for going to the resort and what's going on at that place and everything else. That's why I say, because it misses your family who know you're a Christian and everything, for the sake of God, for the sake of your witness and for God's glory in His name, I wouldn't go. I just wouldn't go. Hmm. I know this will be a tough one thing. Some people, I will be praying for you concerning this. But this is tough. This is tough. I'll share with you. I don't know if you're still there, but I share with you a time where I failed in this area when it comes to standing for the truth. That was a situation where, as a friend of mine that I work with, a coworker, and she's a lesbian. She had a girlfriend and stuff like that, planning on getting married to her. All that kind of stuff. And at the time, this was like a few years ago, but I'm sitting here, getting used to these people, getting to know these people. These are my coworkers, people I'm growing closer to as days go on. And they have a conversation, and it comes about. I don't know how we got on the subject, but it came about that I was a Christian. And not only was a Christian, but I was a minister. At the time, I was ministering, as far as like preaching on certain services and stuff like that. So she found out about it, that I was ordained, and she said, "Jamal, I heard you was a minister, that you preach and stuff." I say, "Yeah, I do." And she's like, "Huh?" So I may what she say? She said, "I may come ask you to do my wedding for me." And I knew she was planning on getting married to a woman. And immediately I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll do that. Ain't no problem. I'll do it." I know it's sin. I know it's wicked. I know all of that. I knew all of that. I knew I didn't agree with the lifestyle. I knew all of that. But to save face and to not want to lose this friendship that I just built, and she was a nice person. She was cool. She's still cool. Like, me and her, like, we are cool to this day. I'm gonna tell you how. I'm gonna tell you how we're still cool. But we're still cool to this day. But she was cool, and I didn't want to mess that up. I didn't want to ruin that relationship. And I end up telling her that. And man, immediately I felt so gut wrenched. I didn't feel right for the rest of the day. I just felt horrible that I sat here and told her in front of all my other coworkers that this Christian man is okay with marrying the same sex. And I know it's wrong. And she was like, "Oh, I'm surprised. See, most people wouldn't have that answer. Most churches wouldn't have that answer." And I was like, "Well, everybody's not the same." So I'm defending this. I'm just digging my hole deeper, man. And I should have stopped and be like, "You know what? I'm sorry. I shouldn't have did that." But I just kept going. I was a little satisfied that, hey, I didn't have to get into this debate right now and all that kind of stuff like that with all these people. I didn't feel like getting into all that with all the coworkers, just back and forth and everything else with this touchy subject. And so I bended, I folded, I felt horrible. It ate at me for days. And one day when the law was passed back in California for same-sex weddings, when that law was passed, we ended up talking about it at my job. And I walked in on a coworker having a conversation about it, and she stopped me and asked me. Now, this is a different coworker. This is not the same lady. This is a different coworker having a conversation about people opposing the same-sex marriage. And she was saying how people should have the right to love who they want to love and stuff like that. And in this room, it was only three of us: me, the lady who's saying it, and another person in there who was listening in. And so this time, I felt like the Lord just gave me like a I gotta put it like He just gave me a free throw. You know, it's just like, hey, here we go, here you go to see what you're gonna do this time. And so I was like, I said, I started, telling her how I felt about it concerning the word and stuff like that, and how the culture defines love the wrong way and all that kind of stuff like that. But the funny thing about this, the reason why I'm bringing it up, is because as I'm speaking to this lady about the subject of gay weddings and stuff like that, in comes the girl who I told days before that I would marry her and her girlfriend. Here she comes now, the perfect time. Here she comes as I'm giving my speech about how it's sinful and how we shouldn't be doing everything else. Here she comes walking through the door. And I'm like, ah. I'm like, oh, Lord. Like, oh, why? But it was the perfect timing. Like, she just came in right as I'm giving my speech. And she walks in and she just stands there. She stands there like this. That's the look she gives me. She's like, and I'm sitting there and I'm still holding down. I'm still standing. I see her right there. I'm looking at her. And when she walks in, when she walks in, I knew what she was thinking. I knew what she was thinking. And I had to immediately stop and say, hey, this is why I'm sorry for what I said the other day. I was wrong. And I'm going to tell you why I shouldn't have said what I said. And this is why I said it. I didn't want to have an argument. I didn't want to have this discussion like this then. I just kind of wanted to bypass it. But I should not have lied. I should not have told that lie to you. And I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me for that. I should not have lied to you. I should have told you how I really felt about that. Because this is how I really feel. This is the truth. Right? And she was mad. And she was upset. But then it's like, to her, it was like, in that moment, she was like, typical. But then she was like, well, at least I know where you really stand. And she said it in a way, it was like, she was so disappointed. She was so disappointed in me. And honestly, I don't think she was disappointed in me because of where I stood. She was disappointed in me because I told her one thing and now I'm saying another. And that made me feel so low. I felt so small. You know what I'm saying? So right there, I'm thankful that she in the mid, and what she could do, she did forgive me for that. You know what I'm saying? It was like, I understand where you're coming from now, cool. But then we started having a conversation. It opened up a door for us to really have a talk. And, you know what I'm saying? And I better share with her the gospel. I got a chance to share with her that day. You know what I'm saying? Is she saved today? Oh, sadly, she's not. You know what I'm saying? But, man, by God's grace, one day she will be. I believe that until she dies, until the Lord takes her away, she has a chance, the Lord, to change her heart if that's what He so chooses to do. And that's my prayer, that He would save her and save anyone else dealing with that. You know what I'm saying? But I was thankful how that turned out. We're still cool. And I'm not cool. I don't condone what she does. She knows where I am with all that stuff like that. But hey, man, I don't hate her. I don't hate her. You know what I'm saying? And so good times while we was working together, it's just, it's a way to do it, but we must be faithful to God's word. We gotta be faithful. And this culture is pushing us to be not faithful. It is. Some of you said, I guess I'm going camping. Yeah. Yeah, it's going camping. But we have to, man, like, we have to search the scriptures, and I'm giving what I would say on this, but just like look to the scriptures, look what how God uses Paul to discuss how we should deal with things in Corinthians, how he deals with it in Colossians, and Galatians. Look at those things. The main thing I just want to be mindful of is what he says in Romans towards the end, is that not only those who do these things deserve punishment, deserve God's judgment, but those who give approval. You know what I'm saying? So we just have to be mindful of that, which you already said you don't give approval. You know what I'm saying? But it's just we have to be mindful, and also those who's looking on. We don't want our good to be evil spoken of. So somebody can say, oh, she's a Christian and she's supporting this, or he's a Christian and he's supporting that, We don't want to do that. I appreciate the question. I mean, that was a good question. Thank you for asking that. Thank you for asking that. May we all be challenged. As I'm saying all these things, I'm just thinking about the challenge that lay ahead for family members that I know who aren't saved and desperately need the gospel, and other loved ones and co-workers who need the truth of the gospel, but for the sake of not wanting to have conflict, we don't share, we don't tell. Man, like, the Lord, please help us with that. Like, we need help with that. We cannot go on being fearful of man. I'm speaking to myself too. Like, we can't be fearful of man. Man has no heaven or hell to put us in. God is the only one who can really judge us, who can send us to hell. Jesus talks about how we can be afraid of somebody who can just harm the body, but not fear the one who can harm the body and throw the soul in eternal fire. So, man, like, let's look to the Lord for strength and courage and boldness to stand for His truth, for His glory, and for our joy. Yep. So we are over the hour. Thank you, Sunbeam, for asking the question. We got past the hour. I know I went over, but it was all good. It was a good topic. And so, with that being said, tune in Saturday, Lord willing. See, is it Saturday? Yes, Saturdays, Lord willing, for the Saturday live stream, subscriber chat, and hangout. I may come on a little earlier. Look out for 12 p.m., like noon time, Eastern time, kind of start up. Because I got some plans later in the afternoon, so I don't want to do it so late. So looking about 12 noon to do the subscriber chat and hangout. So we looking up for that. If I don't see you then or hear from you then, I hope to see you or hear from you on Sunday live stream for the podcast this Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern time. If you want to support this ministry financially, please do so by joining with me on Patreon. The link is in the description and below as well. For only $1 a month, you can support this content and help me be able to keep this going with the podcast and the streaming and the hosting for the website and all those things. It takes expenses, and and I'm just thankful for those who do give. Now, thank you so much for those who do. If you want to support in that way, you can. If not, please continue to pray for me, and I really do appreciate that. I definitely need the prayers of the saints daily. See, is there anything else? No, that's it. So remember, in a world full of errors, the only thing that the doctor prescribes is truth. Blessings.